7. Alamont Free Concert 1969. The Alamont Free Concert was a free one-day festival put on in California by the Rolling Stones. It was supposed to be the West Coast answer to Woodstock, which had just become a massive success, and would feature the Rolling Stones along with other popular hippie artists at the time. Sounds like a nice time, right? Well, unfortunately, the Rolling Stones forgot to plan anything when they announced this festival. They didn't have a location or permits or a team or anything that would be the essential bare minimum of putting on any type of event. They basically just took an entire palm full of acid and went, yeah, man, let's play a free festival. It'll be all love, man. And that was the entire organizational itinerary. The event did find a last minute location at the Alamont Speedway, with some 300,000 dirty, smelly, unemployed
Whoa.
hippies turning up. But due to the last minute arrangement and lack of any actual plan, there was no food, no bathrooms, and no security. To solve the security dilemma, the Stones decided to hire a local group of peace-loving Good Samaritans known as the Hells Angels. The Angels were big fans of crime, violence, and public disorder,
'Cause that's
making
not
them
gonna
the
go
perfect
wrong.
choice for security at a major hippie event. The world was about to find out what happens when you mix the fun drugs with the bad drugs. As the crowd took more acid, the Angels took more crystal meth, and chaos ensued. Hippies would try to jump on stage with the bands and climb speakers for a better view, who the Hells Angels would then proceed to pull down and beat the shit out of. Things got more intense when one of the hippies ended up knocking over an Angel's motorcycle. And for those of you who aren't aware, don't ever do that.
Because hiring a biker gang, anyone who has ever hired a biker gang, it's always turned out well. It's always been a good idea.
They will kill you. This has been your free survival tip of the day. The chaos got so nuts that co-headliners The Grateful Dead canceled their performance, leading to 2 hours of no music playing, with nothing to do besides take more drugs and keep fighting. By the time the Rolling Stones did take the stage, it was too late. The fans were pissed off, with many screaming at the band, and the Hells Angels had no interest in calming things down either. It all finally collapsed when a man ended up being stabbed to death by one of the Angels. The man climbed a speaker to see the Stones play when he was pulled down and brutally beaten by the bikers. The man responded by pulling a gun out of his waist. Yes, someone had a gun on them at the free peace-loving hippie event, and when one of the bikers saw the gun, they repeatedly stabbed the man in the back until he died. This event was seen as one of the final nails in the coffin for the hippie movement, and in the end, another 3 people ended up dying. A couple who were accidentally run over, and a guy that drowned in an irrigation pipe. If you need that one spelled out for
Wait,
you,
what?
that guy was pissing and was so out of his mind on drugs that he passed out and drowned in piss. Just say no, kids. On top of that, a ton of cars were stolen or broken into, and the Alamont Raceway was banned from having music events ever again. Thanks, hippies. Number 6.
Wow, that's okay. So first of all, from an event perspective, you never hire bikies to be your security. I mean, I don't think I need to be. Don't think I need to spell that one out. Yeah, having trained security guards. Usually now we have security guards that all are licensed. So if you want to be a security guard, you need to go get your license to become a security guard. In most countries, there is laws around this. I don't know about the United States, but in the UK, we definitely have licensed security guards. You can't work as a bouncer. You can't work in security unless you have your tags. Same thing in Australia. And the rules and what you can and can't do as a security guard are very strict. You can't, for instance, in Australia, I know the laws around Australian guards a lot more than I do UK guards, but Australian guards, you usually can't punch someone with a closed fist. If you punch someone as a security guard, as a licensed security guard, unless your life is in physical danger, like you are threatened for your life, usually you cannot punch someone, even if they try and punch you. They're very strict around those laws, and you'd have to, it's sort of like, it's more about de-escalating a situation over than escalating. So if you hire a biker gang, they're probably going to escalate a situation and probably stab someone. And it goes without saying, security guards don't have knives on them. So security, no matter if you are fans of security or not, or fans of security, or you don't like security and you hate security wherever you go in events, usually most security do have tags that prevent these sort of situations from happening, and it prevents bad actors coming into security forces and being ultra violent like a biker gang would be. Obviously, when you're organizing a festival, you want to have a good production manager, and you can get good production managers and good production companies that will handle all of the logistics and all of the production behind a festival. I think this is very light in what he went into, but essentially, if you have no water at the festival or food, that's a very risky thing to do, and people are going to get even more annoyed because there's no access to food and water. And the fact that a guy died in an irrigation ditch, I mean, that's kind of like, I can't remember what the awards are called. Someone must tell me in the comments what the award is called. The Darwin Awards. Sorry, that is what it's called. The Darwin Awards, I think it is, where someone dies by a stupid way. Dying in an irrigation ditch is probably like he died, like as he said, he probably died in piss and drowned in piss, which is fun. It's sad, but it's funny at the same time. Yeah, I mean, that's going to happen when you don't have proper bathrooms and there's no organization. And that's the problem with sometimes with celebrities and people who want to take into events and they have no idea about how to run a festival. And that is still happening even to this day. And yeah, I mean, Fire Festival, like, that is a perfect example of someone who is stupid enough to try and do an event and have no event experience and have no idea what goes into making an event. But anyways, now they've got another one of those coming.
Indiana State Fair 2011. Does a fair count as a festival? For the purpose of this video, we're going to say yes, because it's hard to talk about disasters at concerts without mentioning this one. In 2011, all things were going smoothly at the Indiana State Fair, with fans excited to see country act Sugarland perform on the stage. But there had been warnings of intense weather hitting the fair right when the band were scheduled to go on. The fair discussed with the band and the authorities what should happen, and it was ultimately decided that the show would be delayed but still take place. Fans continued waiting at the stage despite conditions getting gradually worse, but they were eager to see the show and didn't want to lose their place. Winds got so bad that right when Sugarland were originally scheduled to go on, it was decided the event would be fully canceled. But before anyone was able to make that announcement, the entire stage fucking collapsed. Apparently the stage was only built as a temporary setup and wasn't able to handle such extreme winds.
Well,
the
no
collapse ended
shit.
up killing 7 people, injuring another 58, and traumatizing a lot more people than that. It's a pretty horrifying image seeing a stage go down like that. Other attendees rushed in to try to help those that were trapped, and the next day of the fair was canceled so authorities could investigate. In the end, the stage collapse resulted in a $50 million settlement to the victims and their families, also leading to further regulations on outdoor concert security, and making everyone think twice about going to a Sugarland concert. Number 5.
I'm looking forward to this next one, but we'll just quickly wrap up this one. So this sort of stage here, he did mention it wasn't designed for high winds. So usually on festival stages such as these, when basically with structures like this, you have on the top sort of left-hand corner, you will have, you can see my cursor here, either on the top here or here, or here, somewhere on the top of the truss, on the topmost portion of the structure, you'll have an animator. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's basically like a wind gauge, and it will tell. It feeds a line down, like wherever it's put. A line will go down this truss and into a computer, and it will tell the people on the ground what the wind conditions are at the top of the structure. This is something that's been implemented over the years at many sort of festival events, and especially it's used in the UK. And these little devices are simply just to tell organizers how windy it is at the top of the structure, because wind is obviously different depending on the height. And if it's getting to a point where it's too windy at the top of that structure, not only will they not allow people to climb up there, because quite often you have technicians that will climb up these structures during an event to fix something in the rig or whatever else, but so they'll cancel that first if it's too windy, and then if it's really windy, obviously they'll evacuate because it's against the structural integrity of the structure. There's 2 reasons why this would have failed in this particular instance, and I'm obviously just going off this video alone, but the 2 is probably the lack of ballasts and the fact that it's not rated for the winds that this festival was having. He mentioned that this wasn't designed for this and it was only a temporary structure. Well, all festival stages are temporary structures, but some of them are rated for better wind resistance than others. in this particular case, it looks like it didn't have enough ballasts, because if you have enough ballasts on most of these struts and most of these legs, they will stay in place. What will take them will be the weight of the rest of the rig, basically. So the columns here, they will stay standing, but what will take it will be this weight. So as soon as this starts to fail, or the legs start to fail on one side, probably because they don't have enough ballasts on them, then the weight, even if these have ballasts on them, this will push this. Okay, I'm going to start this again because it's too much wrong. So what I think went wrong here, just based on watching the video, is the fact that they don't have enough ballasts on the structure. So ballasts are basically big weights. You usually use them either water or concrete. Concrete's better because if you have a festival that ranges a couple of days, what happens with water? It basically evaporates. Even if it's a big thing of water, then they evaporate over time and then you lose your weight. So concrete is the best way for long-term ballasts on temporary structures such as these. I think what probably happened is they didn't have enough ballasts on them, and the truck structure itself, the way it was designed, probably was not designed for these style of winds or these types of winds. So again, they mentioned that there was more regulation after this. I don't know what they are off the top of my head. I'm also not a structural engineer, and I am not someone who builds these regularly. If I'm going to get a stage like this, I'm going to put this in the hands of someone who knows a lot more about structural engineering than I do. So this sort of goes into the more temporary structural engineering side, which I don't have enough knowledge to give a good enough opinion on this in terms of structural, because I'm not a structural engineer. But from my experience in the events industry, it more than likely was lack of ballasts and the fact that this wasn't rated for these types of winds. So yeah, as you can see, the roof is still more or less completely intact, but then what you don't really see in this image is the fact that there is still a whole bunch of lighting in the center there. The line arrays, which are the speakers, are on the side, might have crushed people. These things are not light, especially when you put them all together and they're still actually rigged onto truss. Like, they haven't come off the truss, they're still rigged on the truss. They're going to be extremely heavy to get off people if it's crushed people. So finding some way to get that out, I don't know how they would have done it. Maybe they got a forklift or a boom lift or something like that, something mechanical to try and lift that, because that would have been a lot of weight if you got trapped underneath there, and I'm not surprised that people were injured and were killed from this.
Number 5, Astroworld. You probably know of this one already, but hey, let's talk about it. Astroworld was a rap and hip-hop festival that took place in Houston, Texas. Put on by rapper Travis Scott, who is known for encouraging his fans to do some hood rat shit. The event was almost guaranteed to attract a bad crowd from the start. Reports of people rushing security and breaking into the festival ran rampant, leading to a much larger crowd than was anticipated. The festival already had pretty inadequate security and safety measures to deal with the crowd they already knew was coming, and as Travis Scott's headlining set got closer, things only got worse.
So I'm going to go back just a bit. I want to talk about how this is still an issue, and that is when people without tickets try and rush a venue or a festival to try and get in, and they just rush it and without a ticket. Unfortunately, this is actually still happening. Very recently, there was the deaths at Brixton Academy in London, where quite a number of people were killed. I think it was 3 or 4 people were killed from memory. One of them was actually a security guard that was killed. When thousands of people rocked up to an event and who didn't have tickets and tried to rush the entrance. This is also another instance of this, and I have seen this firsthand actually happen at festivals as well. And it is quite common for people to try and jump fences and try and get into the festival without paying for tickets. When it becomes a real security issue, 1 or 2 people jumping a fence is, to be expected. However, when you have hundreds of people storming a gates like this, it becomes nearly impossible for festival organizers to maintain safe capacities and manage all the people that are inside the festival in a safe and secure way with the security that they have. I mean, in the images that we have here, it kind of looks like there is, well, more or less no security. We have a look here and they're just all rushing. There's like 1 security guard, 2 security guards that are pushing, like they weren't even trying to stop them. And when you have that amount of people trying to push through, there's not much security can actually do. Like, most entrances to festivals will have anywhere between 5 to 10 people at an entrance of this size, checking people's bags, checking people's IDs, that sort of thing. However, when you have hundreds of people trying to get through, trying to stop those people from getting into the festival is, with that amount of staff, is near impossible. And it's on the borderline of actually needing riot police to stop that amount of people from getting through those gates. I mean, you can see there, they've pushed over fences, they've knocked over all of the security apparatus that is there. And as event professionals, we can try and plan for this as much as possible. But when you're facing hundreds of people who are storming it just randomly, you don't know it's going to happen. It's very difficult to combat. And this is where normal security don't really have the skills or the expertise to stop it. And it falls into the purview of police and riot police, in my opinion, to try and stop this. I mean, as I said, you can have security, but security guards aren't going to try and tackle 100 people and stop them from entering, especially in this scenario.
To deal with the crowd they already knew was coming. And as Travis Scott's headlining set got closer, things only got worse. The crowd surged as Travis took to the stage, leading thousands of people to be crushed. People couldn't breathe and were starting to pass out everywhere, leading some to take to climbing onto the festival structure to try to call for help. People began dying in the crowd as they'd pass out and get trampled on. Emergency services did their best to save anyone they could, but they were understaffed, undertrained, and weren't prepared for a situation this bad. Medic cards tried to get through the crowd, but struggled as the headliner was still performing. Travis Scott later claimed he was unaware as to what was happening in the crowd, despite stopping the concert multiple times. People were dropping like flies and were literally being crushed to death while a shitty rapper performed on the stage. And it wasn't until his show was finally over that the totality of the situation was realized. 8 people ended up dying at the scene, including a young boy. Another 2 died later from their injuries. The events of Astroworld shocked America and are still going through the blame game of what led to it happening. Travis Scott is still haunted by the memory of it, as he made a real shit apology right after it happened, and many still hold him responsible. But I think the most tragic part of the Astroworld story was that all of those people had to listen to Travis Scott's music. Number 4.
Okay. You know, feelings aside about whether you like Travis Scott or not, I mean, I don't listen to that music, but yeah, I mean, dying is worse than listening to Travis Scott. Let's keep it real. So, crushing Astroworld. Astroworld is for more up-to-date information on this. So he didn't face criminal prosecution, and he paid out a settlement basically to the survivors. I think there is still some court cases going on, but to my knowledge, the majority of them are over. So what we have with Astroworld is a really terrible case of multiple factors coming together to lead to a really mass casualty event. And this is not just a few casualties. This is mass casualty. They had, over 10 people die. They had multiple people injured. So I've pulled up just a quick picture here of what the festival looked like, and the main amount of crushing happened in this area here. Now, the reason why this happened was because when you have people and hundreds of people pushing into, trying to get into and view Travis and get very close with their phones, and they're all young and all excited and all of that, all of them were pushing here and pushing people up against this barricade, and no one was able to breathe in this section of the festival. People in this section of the festival were okay. People in this section, though, were not as lucky. And because the artist is all the way back here and they've got lights shining on them, to be fair, he probably couldn't see this far. All you can see is a sea of people. And when people are just putting their hands up and they're just sort of waving at you like this, you don't know whether they're just trying to get your attention or whether they're trying to get a photo with you or whatever the case, or make them notice you. Yeah, it's very difficult when you're on stage to really know what's happening. But in saying that, though, the reason why this could have been prevented is because at a lot of festivals nowadays, what they do is they actually put a barricade all the way through here. So they put a barricade on the left side, like to close it off in a way, so that the festival's security team can manage how many people are going into that particular area. Problem is that they didn't have this in this particular instance, and there was no way for, if you got into this area here, there was no way to get out because they'd already blocked this area off here as well. Some of the things that went wrong with this that I know outside of this video is the fact that I know that they tried to get the camera operator's attention. So a lot of people here were trying to get the camera operator's attention here to get him to stop the show. Camera operators don't have that power. In fact, they're only usually communicating with the video director. However, it doesn't take that long to get in touch with a video director, to get in touch with production management, and to tell the production management, you need to stop. People are dying in the show. We've got people passed out. There's a mass casualty event. There is a great video that I haven't watched yet, but I've been told is very good it's basically a documentary about this whole event, which I'll probably do a video for. However, I obviously don't have that right now up. But suffice to say that if there were people and there's an emergency vehicle trying to get through a crowd, obviously the show needs to be stopped. Like, anyone who's having a medical emergency, I think a show should stop. Because it allows emergency services to get to them. It allows people to move out of the way and not be encouraged to continue dancing and continue watching the video, or continue watching the show. And they're more in tuned about what's happening around them, opposed to watching the show. So I think it was very poor taste for Travis Scott to continue the show when he could see an emergency vehicle driving along. And the fact that this was happening and a whole show could go ahead without the production management team saying, oh, maybe we should stop the show because we're having reports of a mass casualty event. As soon as a mass casualty event happens, that's a show stop in my mind. A show should be stopped. I just don't understand why it wasn't stopped in this time, because there's so many people who could have seen this happening and they just let it continue on. And it actually makes me sick a little bit. As an event professional, it makes me sick that they didn't stop the show. And yeah, it's bad. To put it bluntly, it's bad. Anyways, before I move on to the next one, I'll wrap up what my thoughts are on this. Basically, they didn't have the barriers in place to prevent overcrowding in this particular area, so it was a poor design to begin with. There wasn't enough production management oversight and they didn't have the balls to stop the show and go up to Travis and say, you need to stop. There is an emergency. We need to stop. And there was a lack of communication. And communication, when you have a lack of communication in an event, it's the same as being at war. It can cost people's lives. I mean, I know that's very dramatic, but in this case, it's very true. You know, if the production manager and the stage manager or the tour manager and the festival promoter and whoever was in charge of the operations on site knew this was happening and had communications with first responders as they should have, they would know that we should have stopped the festival. And yeah, communications are key. And in this particular very sad case, someone lost their lives. A couple people lost their lives and many people were injured.